All right, let's just jump right in. When I say the name Kenny Loggins, I bet a certain sound immediately pops into your head. He's one of those artists, right? A voice that's just always been there. And because of that, you probably think you've got him totally figured out.
I mean, of course you do. Footloose, I'm All Right, Danger Zone. Come on, the guy is the undisputed king of the 80s movie soundtrack. A hit-making machine that basically wrote the score for a whole decade of movies. But, that's just one chapter in a much, much weirder and more fascinating story.
What if I told you there was a single, unifying theory that could actually map out every single twist and turn of his 5 decades in music? We're talking everything from his folk rock days, all the way to his new age spiritual stuff and everything in between.
Well, there is one. It's his wild framework that reframes his whole career, not as some straight line of hits, but as something way more cyclical, something almost primal.
It sees his journey as an Ouroboros, that ancient symbol of a serpent constantly consuming its own past just so it can be reborn. So today, we're going to use that exact lens to explain the man you thought you knew.
So the framework we're going to be using here is something we're calling the Ouroboros music theory, or OMT for short. Just think of it as this really unique lens for looking at an artist's entire life's work.
Okay, so the core idea of OMT is that an artist's career is kind of like a closed system. And for that artist to evolve, to create something truly new, they have to consume their previous identity. It's like they have to metaphorically eat their past self to get the fuel for their future. And we're going to break down this career using the 4 pillars of this theory. First up is unity, which is like the cohesive vision of an era. Then there's balance, that stability an artist finds between 2 opposing forces. Next is symmetry, how different parts of their career actually mirror each other. And honestly, the most important one, paradox, this idea that all creative energy, all the good stuff, is born from tension.
So let's start at the very beginning, with the creative paradox that really launched his career, Loggins and Messina.
Now this slide really lays out the central paradox of their whole partnership. On one side, you've got Jim Messina, the experienced producer, the mentor, bringing that country rock structure. And on the other side, you've got Kenny Loggins, this raw, soulful apprentice who's pushing towards jazz and R&B. In OMT terms, their incredible success came directly from the creative friction between these 2 opposing forces. It's a classic case.
But here's the thing about OMT. A system without friction, it just dies. Loggins himself even said the dynamic got too comfortable. In our theory, that's called static equilibrium, and it's a creative death sentence. The paradox that had fueled them was gone. So for the serpent to survive, it had to break up the duo. It had to consume that first identity.
And that act of consumption led directly to his solo peak. This era of incredible harmony, legendary collaborations, what we now affectionately call yacht rock.
And nothing illustrates this creative process better than the story behind the Grammy-winning What a Fool Believes. It's just a perfect OMT case study. You have Michael McDonald with the spark, that iconic piano riff, but he's totally stuck. Then Loggins acts as the processor. He literally hears the riff through a door, and his mind just fills in the blanks. He comes up with the bridge and the hook. It's this perfect, almost magical synthesis of 2 creative minds firing at once. So this timeline just gives us a quick bird's-eye view of where we've been. We've seen the duo, we've seen the solo breakout, but as you can tell, the biggest commercial explosion, well, that was still on the horizon, as Loggins was about to plug himself into a much, much larger machine. And here we are, the 80s. The era of the blockbuster movie, where Kenny Loggins basically consumes his yacht rock persona to become a vital part of the Hollywood hit machine. 157 beats per minute. That is the relentless, mechanical, almost machine-like tempo of Danger Zone. Seriously, think about it. It's not just a song, it's a piece of high-performance audio engineering. It was designed for one thing, maximum cinematic impact.
And this is the moment where Loggins becomes what our theory calls a systemic part. He's actively suppressing his own personal artistic side to serve the needs of a much larger system, the Hollywood blockbuster. His job wasn't just to write a good song anymore. It was to write a song that perfectly synchronized with the adrenaline of a Tom Cruise movie.
And here is the paradox of this whole era. Loggins himself has said that Danger Zone doesn't represent him as an artist at all. I mean, he didn't even write it. He was brought in after bands like Toto and REO Speedwagon turned it down. He basically acted as an avatar, just channeling this rock and roll persona to fit the track. So his biggest hit was also the song that was the least him, Wild.
Now, a system just can't survive on that kind of paradox forever. For the cycle to keep going, the soundtrack king had to be sacrificed. The serpent had to eat its own most successful self to fuel what came next, a spiritual rebirth.
So facing the end of his marriage and watching that classic 80s sound start to fade, Loggins, he pivoted hard. He released the album Leap of Faith, this sprawling, deeply personal record that completely rejected the tight 3-minute pop formulas he had perfected. It was raw, it was vulnerable, and it was a total rejection of the avatar he'd become. And that brings us to the modern era. This is where that cycle of consumption and rebirth starts to transform into something new, an adaptive loop that's really focused on legacy. See, OMT would predict that all systems eventually decay. It's this concept called entropy. But Loggins is actively fighting it. He went back to a collaborative, democratic band with Blue Sky Writers. Get this, after losing his upper register during the pandemic, he retrained his voice and now says he can hit higher notes than he could in his 30s. And, crucially, he's now mentoring young artists, which makes sure that the cycle continues, even beyond himself.
And this table just maps out the entire journey so perfectly through the lens of our theory. You can see each era, its OMT phase, and the key tension that really drove it. And look how the dominant pillar shifts, from the symmetry of that teacher-student dynamic with Messina, to the external unity demanded by Hollywood, and finally to the balance he's looking for now in his modern adaptive cycle, fighting that universal tension between aging and vitality. It all just clicked.
So when you look at it this way, Kenny Loggins' career isn't some simple timeline of hits you can put on a graph. It's a living, breathing Ouroboros. He consumed the folk singer to become the yacht rock icon. He consumed that icon to become the soundtrack king. And then he had to consume the king just to find his own voice again.
It's really a powerful model for creative survival, which kind of leaves us with one last question. What part of your own story, your own identity, might you need to let go of or to consume in order to fuel whatever comes next for you?